What's up, everybody? Welcome to State of the Nation, the Athletics Raiders podcast. I am Jimmy Durkin with Vic Tafur, and we've got a special guest, Ted Nguyen, over here. We're coming to you live from, well, not live, but we're coming to you from San Francisco.
We're not live?
We're not live.
Okay.
Yeah, not live. We are here at the Athletic headquarters. Some fancy new digs here in downtown San Francisco. Loving life, right?
Yeah, I need a raise. This place is nice.
Yeah. All right, well, it's off-season, but there really is no off-season. You guys just got back from Mobile, Alabama last week. How was that?
It was all right. It was my first time going. I learned some stuff. The city itself was not really a hopping good time.
Well, you snuck in a night in New Orleans before and after, so you can't really complain about your time in Mobile.
I'm not complaining. There's no complaints. I'm just talking about Mobile as a whole. But, yeah, I went to New Orleans to have some fun before and after. I ran into Jack Del Rio on Sunday. That was kind of fun. But it was a fun trip. I think it was good for the Raiders staff to kind of get a win. It's good to get a win.
They beat you, Kyle. I got your back.
They beat Shanahan. I think they had a good time talking to the young players. I think it was good for kind of therapeutic after a rough season to kind of turn the page. And the kids were really excited to be with the Raiders on the staff. And, yeah, it was a fun week.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. It's my first Senior Bowl, so it was good getting to meet people and network with some coaches and scouts, and good to see those guys live. I think it does make a difference in the overall evaluation of some of these guys. And good for the Raider staff because I don't think any of those guys at the Senior Bowl might be considered for one of their top picks, but there's definitely a bunch of candidates there for some of the later first-round draft picks.
One of my first impressions watching, I'm back at home, watched Gruden, his first press conference there. He seemed like he was in a much better place. You being there, could you sense that he was, the kind of the tired, frustrated guy that we saw at the end of the season? Do you think he's a little bit removed from that and seemed like he was enjoying himself a lot more and kind of in a much better place?
Definitely. All the questions were kind of looking forward, which I think he appreciated. I just kind of, like I said, turn the page. I think he wants to put last season behind him as much as he can. And, yeah, just all these guys he's excited about, all these young players he wants to get on his team and kind of get some wins.
And then for Mike Mayock, a much different Senior Bowl for him. To get a chance to talk with him, what kind of a week do you think he had?
I think he had a good week. I'm sure it was weird. In the past, he's been kind of the expert kind of guys coming in and ask his opinion. And now
he's doing analysis from on the field.
Yeah, now he can't say anything. Now he's kind of like, oh yeah, that guy's okay. I mean, he can't really show his cards, but I think he enjoyed it. I think I was impressed. We had talked to him for about a half hour on I think it was Thursday night, just about how he has approached the staff. He's kind of tried to really bring the coaching staff and the scouting staff together. They have binders now. They're sharing information. He wants the coaches to type in reports in the scouting computers and just kind of a more cohesive front. And I think he's excited about the challenge. Obviously, he says it's the most important offseason in the history of the Raiders organization. So
it's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, they got a lot of money, and they got 3 first-round picks. So if they're going to turn this around, this is definitely going to be the offseason to get it rolling.
Yeah, man, and I think when you consider all the turmoil they went through last offseason, just the idea of them, of Gruden and McKenzie trying to make it work and all that, and different scouting staffs, different draft boards, just to be all on one page and to enter. I mean, this draft, is it the most important in the history of the Raiders? I don't know. We won't ever really know that. But it is hugely important. I mean, it's probably the most important draft that Jon Gruden will oversee with the Raiders because to come off the year that you had, you've got this big move to Vegas coming. You need to land impact players here.
Definitely, not only at 4, but also at the last 2 spots.
You got to get 2 starters at those last 2 spots and an impact player at 4.
Those guys are going to always be compared to Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper, the guys that get at 24 and 27. So you definitely need guys who can make plays right away.
Yeah, and I think this draft actually, the strength of this draft fits what the Raiders need. So they need a pass rusher, and this is a very strong draft class for pass rushers, and they need a big play wide receiver, and there's a bunch of good wide receivers in the draft as well.
All right, we obviously, you mentioned that there's not really any players that were there that'll be considered at the number 4 pick. There would have been one if Josh Allen had decided to stick around, but the way he played in that bowl game and the way he played all year, there was no reason for him to participate. But who did you see in Mobile that is in the mix, that could be in the mix there at 24 and 27? We'll start with you, Ted.
I think Nasir Adderley, the safety from Delaware, is definitely in the mix. The Raiders could use another safety. And he just fits exactly what the Raiders need. He's very versatile. They had him try to play cornerback all all week, and he got burned by a couple wide receivers, but that's not his natural position. When he covered tight ends, he looked really good. He's really physical. It just seemed like the coaches were talking him up there, so I think he's a guy that's definitely in consideration at the end of the first.
How about you, Vic?
I'm not sure there's much there first-round pick-wise. I know Adderley's a guy that they like, but if you passed on Derwin James last year, I don't know if Adderley's the guy I want to reach for the next year afterward. I think he's good. A lot of these guys didn't really jump off the field for me. I wasn't the quarterbacks I thought were not very impressive. The pass rushers, like you mentioned, Allen wasn't here, and the guys that were here, like Zach Allen, I thought had a terrible week. So I didn't really see pass rushers at this event. I'm sure there's plenty in the draft, but no one here really jumped off the page. Jalen Ferguson's the guy who's been talked about, Louisiana Tech. To me, he's like a poor man's Arden Key. I mean, he's got some talent, he's got some upside, but I'm not sure he can help next year if you draft him in the first round. So there's a guard. What's the guard's name from?
Risden.
Risden, yeah. He's going to be a first-round pick. They like him a lot. Do you draft a guard? He can play tackle, but you draft a guard tackle again that high? I mean, I can see that one maybe just because I think he's an impact guy who really hit it off with Gruden and the staff and Tom Cable. So I can see that, 24, 27, if he's still there, which it probably won't be. But I think he's an impact guy, which I think you always could take on the front line.
What are your guys' impressions of Montez Sweat? He's a guy that, was maybe one of the highest profile guys that was there, was participating. I know kind of reading your stuff from there, not the most impressive week for you, but I mean, other people thought that he had a pretty good week at times. What were you guys' both impressions of Montez Sweat?
I think that his performance got a little overhyped because he had a few highlight plays where he just ran over a couple guys. I think he ran over the tackle from Alabama State a couple times, and I think people just kind of overhyped that. But we knew he had power and he had length, and what I wanted to see from him was more bend and a little more ability to get around the edge, and he just looks kind of stiff in the hips. And you could be a productive pass rusher if you're stiff and you have enough power, but I think for a elite pass rusher, a guy that you want to pick at number 4, I think you want a guy with a little more bend. So I think Josh Allen fits that a little bit more. I just don't see Montez Sweat as that elite rusher just yet. I don't think his Senior Bowl performance really answered some of the questions about him.
I agree. I thought Risden got the best of him in the O-line in the bowl game itself. The practices, he was on the South team. I only saw one South practice. I watched the North pretty closely. I only got to see one South practice. He didn't really jump off the field to me, but I heard he had better practices the other two. So I think, like Ted said, he's definitely a guy. You can see the tools. You can see why he would be a first-round pick. I'm not sure about the high first round. I think he's more of a guy that also has to get better with some coaching, and maybe, like he mentioned, the bend is not quite there what you want in an elite pass rusher. So, to me, again, I was not really impressed with the overall. A lot of guys at this bowl game I thought would be great, 3rd, 4th round picks. I'd be really nervous taking these guys. Even the receivers. Receivers had a great bowl game. A lot of receivers stood out, but I thought the cornerbacks were terrible. So I'm not going to really go crazy about a receiver based on what I saw either. So hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I wasn't really loving the high-end talent at this bowl game.
I mean, that's the hard thing about where the Senior Bowl is at right now, that the guys that are first-rounders, second-rounders, the big impact players, they don't make it the senior year. I mean, so you're never going to get the best talent anymore at the Senior Bowl. And so I guess those guys, those high-end guys, most people, any scout should be able to evaluate them. So I guess that is where the Senior Bowl kind of fits right now in this scheme of in the offseason, in the draft preparation, is that it is the place to get extra knowledge about those under the radar guys that you're going to try to take in those middle to late rounds. And as we know, I mean, if you can land a guy that's a semi-impact player or a starter in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that's where you can really make some money in the draft, because really your first rounders better be hitting. Those are kind of automatics. They need to hit. You don't want to have any busts there.
Yeah, it's a chance to hit a home run in the 4th or 5th round. I know when the Raiders were there with Dennis Allen's staff, they thought they did that with C.O. Moore and Tyler Wilson. Those guys didn't work. But that was the goal of those picks. We know these guys well. They're better than what they're being viewed as, so we're going to get some steals. So that case didn't work out. But same here. I think these guys, Mayock and Gruden, are targeting certain guys. They liked it a lot. There's a defensive end, John Kaminsky out of Charleston. There's a small guy. He's put a lot of weight in college. He definitely made some plays in practice. He's probably a guy in the 5th round maybe, but he's a guy they like a lot. Maybe that's a guy they target, do some more research on. So you find some jewels hidden there. You hope they can put some shine on by draft time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because a lot of these guys need development, and when you're there, as a staff, you get to see what their habits are, how coachable they are, and how if they're able to develop, you get to see that firsthand. So you get a little bit of a advantage, I guess, when you look for those mid-round guys when you have experience with them at the Senior Bowl.
Well, and I know one thing that Gruden, I think he mentions a couple of times, is that if he can eliminate a guy from his list, if he can say, I don't even need to spend any more time with you, I'm done researching you, you're gone, that can be as valuable as picking out those guys you want to spend more time on.
Yeah, and I would imagine Zach Allen probably falls in that category. I think Zach Allen's probably a guy who was looked at as a first-round guy. I mean, now he's probably a second-round guy. But I just didn't see – I mean, he moved around a lot in college. Maybe that hurt him. He doesn't have an impact spot. But he's a guy I totally thought was lost, and I think he must be out of the first-round considerations. That's a guy you're probably like, okay, we're not – this guy – he'll probably go second round, but he's probably not for us, I would think, for the Raiders. He doesn't really fit in immediate need. I know they like his versatility, but still you need to be really good at one spot before you can kind of branch out to me. So I think he's a guy you could rule out probably.
Another defensive end to ask you guys about, Jalen Jelks out of Oregon. Any impressions out of him?
Jalen Jelks, the guy I watched the day I was the pool reporter. He had a great play. He turned around the end, and he batted a pass about 20 yards back. So I think he's like a lean guy who, again, another poor man's Arden Key has to put some weight on, but they can see the raw ability.
So a poor man's Arden Key. What exactly is Arden Key right now?
Arden Key.
He's the guy who had one sack as a rookie.
But he was so close on 8 of them. He was so close. I just think by that I mean he's a guy. He's a project. He's a guy who I think you see the bend, you see some really good things there, but he's probably not big enough or experienced enough at this point to come in and have like a big rookie season.
All right, let's talk about a couple receivers. Andy Isabella, you wrote about him, a guy who's not a big guy, but a quick receiver that made an impression over the week.
I thought he was the biggest winner of the whole week. I thought he's a guy who the speed everyone knew about. He says he ran a 4.3 or 4.2. He's got some ridiculous times. We'll see the combine for real, but his speed flashed in college at UMass. He was an outside guy in college. He can't be an outside guy in the NFL. He's too small. So he played a lot of slot this week. They moved him around a little bit, and he made some plays in the game, made some plays at practice. Gruden really likes him. So I think he's a guy who probably went from like a question mark to a definite second or third round pick, even though he's only 5'8". He measured at 5'8", I think. He listed at 5'10", but on the weigh-in day, he was like 5'8", So definitely small, but if you want speed, you want that. His idol is Tyreek Hill. He wants to be a Tyreek Hill type player, which I'm sure Gruden wants to have, one of those kind of guys. Yeah. So I think he fits the mold in today's NFL. Just a really fast slot guy who can make a lot of plays.
Yeah, I mean, I like Isabella, but 5'8" is really small, and
5'8",
Yeah, and I don't know if there's been a receiver who's really succeeded in the NFL at that height. And the thing is, he was trapping the ball with his body a few times. So, and he didn't drop any, but that just kind of indicates that he might not have the biggest passing radius, and he's already pretty small. And I think you mentioned in your article that he takes a little bit of time to release. He adds a little extra, too much funk to his routes sometimes, but you could coach that out of somebody. So those are my two concerns with him, and I wonder if the Raiders like those smaller slot receivers, because I thought Nick Switzer had a pretty good camp with the Raiders, and they ended up trading him. Ryan Switzer. They ended up trading him before the season, and it just seems like they're targeting bigger receivers now. So I wonder if he's a fit for the offense, or maybe Carr just likes bigger targets.
Come on, Andy Isabella is a small, quick receiver from UMass. We all know where he's going. He's going to New England.
But they have a Hall of Famer in Judah Edelman.
They got to get another one. All right, another receiver to talk about, Penny Hart, Georgia State. Impressions of him? I
liked him. I think he's definitely can see him being a guy in the NFL. He's definitely small. Not as small as Isabella, but he's definitely not big. He's probably like 5'9", 5'10". Similar skills. He has a lot of speed. He's quick in and out of his cuts. Had a nice week of practice. Didn't do much in the game. I'm not sure why, but he had one catch in the game. I'm not sure if he was used that much, but maybe they tried to hide him, maybe stash him. But that'd be kind of messed up though if you're doing that to a kid at the Senior Bowl. Like, you can't play because we're going to draft you in the 5th round. So shh. But I liked him. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a guy you would target in late 4th or 5th round as a guy who can come in and make some plays.
Yeah, I thought Hart. I was more impressed with Hart than Isabella. I just really liked the way he ran routes. I thought he was more physical than surprisingly physical, and he did a good job plucking the ball out of the air, but he had a couple drops on the last day too. But he's definitely a guy that made turned a lot of heads at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was one of the better performers at the Senior Bowl.
Well, here's, you talked about he didn't make many plays in the game. Well, he's not exactly a big game guy because I'm pulling up his stats, and I remember back in his freshman year, he had a great season, had been a 1,000-yard receiver. He got into his team's bowl game, only had one catch for 14 yards in a loss to San Jose State in the Cure Bowl.
I was wondering where this was going. Now I get it. Yeah.
And you know who had a touchdown catch in that game? His fourth reception of the season, his first career touchdown? Josh Oliver, another guy we could talk about, San Jose State tight end. So Josh Oliver got the best of Penny Hart way back in 2015 in the Cure Bowl when a 5-7 San Jose State team won a bowl game.
Wow. Based on all that, Hart is off my board.
It's off your board.
Do not judge Hart.
He only got one pass against San Jose State.
He's off.
But Ted, I know you had some impressions of Josh Oliver and a guy that is looking pretty good and is going to be a guy that could be a mid-round pick there at tight end.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that just looks like an NFL player. He's huge, 6'4", about 250. But he just looked like the most explosive tight end at the Senior Bowl. His speed was pretty noticeable. He has a pretty close physical profile to a Raider tight end, Jared Cook. I don't know if he's going to run a 4.5 like Cook did, but I think he could run a pretty good time in a combine. And if he does, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move up draft boards. But I liked Oliver. I wish he got a couple targets in the game, but I thought he performed well in the practices.
All right, I wanted to go over, you wrote your article, Ted, when you got back of the 5 guys that the Raiders and Niners should be keeping an eye on. So let's kind of run down some of the guys you mentioned there. We had edge rusher Charles Omenihu from Texas. Impressions on him, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I liked him. A lot of the Senior Bowl pass rushers are they're not guys with great bend or a lot of speed off the edge, but I thought Omenihu showed enough bend where it'd be a pretty dangerous combination with his power too. He's a guy that definitely needs more development, but I like his tools better than Sweat actually.
I agree. He had a good week. He had a couple great practice on Monday or Tuesday. Wednesday didn't do very much, but kind of finished off strong. I think he's a top 50 pick, probably top 60 pick. I think he definitely has some tools he's going to work with. I think the Raiders liked him, so I think he's a guy. If you don't get maybe a pass rusher that you want early on, maybe you get one in the second or third round.
All right, another guy, and of the 5 guys you mentioned, 2 of them we've already talked about, and Adderley and Oliver, so we'll get to the last 2 guys that you mentioned in the story you wrote. Ted, cornerback Isaiah Johnson out of Houston, a guy who, not necessarily an impressive week, he's not a guy that's super refined, but you see some potential in him. Yeah,
some people might mistake his performance for him having slow feet, but I think his technique was just so bad. He switched to wide receiver in his junior year, so he really doesn't have that much experience playing cornerback, and I don't think the University of Houston is known for churning out defensive backs either.
DJ Hayden! Come on!
But he when his technique is right, he has really good ball skills, obviously, from playing wide receiver. He looks really fluid, and he kind of reminds me of Richard Sherman physically. He's a guy that if you could get him in the mid-rounds and maybe develop him, he looks like he has the profile to be a really good cornerback.
All right, and last guy, right tackle, Caleb McGarry from Washington. Impressions there of the right tackle?
I thought he played well. He had some really nice reps, and he's a guy that played right tackle his entire career, so he's not like a left tackle that people think is too slow, and he has to move over to the right. I liked what he did, and he could be. I think that the Raiders have to bring in some right tackle competition. I know they say they like Brandon Parker a lot, but at times he just looks so bad that I think you have to bring some competition in case he doesn't develop into what you think he's going to be.
Did you see Parker dance? He was on the James Corden
Yeah,
show?
Somebody tweeted us to DVR it. I did not.
You did not watch him
I
dance?
didn't watch it.
He's got some moves.
Got some moves?
Parker's got some moves.
Did he look
Needs
light
some
on
power.
his feet?
It was like a big man's dancing halftime show they were doing, like a bit. It wasn't a great bit, but he actually did okay for himself. I mean, he's a good agent. Got some pub.
All right. Anybody? Any other final impressions you guys want to bring us back from Mobile? Anybody else you want to talk about?
The quarterbacks. I mean,
Yeah.
I know. I was surprised. I know Ted's a Daniel Jones guy.
But come on,
He
because
was-
the Raiders are taking Kyler Murray. At
He was
number
MVP.
4,
He was MVP. How was he MVP? I must have not been watching that game. I mean, I didn't see anything out of the quarterbacks all week. I mean, I really.
Well, the media there voting probably was half asleep, so they just, that guy threw a touchdown, give it to him.
I mean, he looked bad in the first. He looked bad. I thought up and down practice a week. The first half didn't look very good. He made some plays second half, but the defense was not great. He had a lot of time back there. I didn't see any pocket presence. I think. I don't know. If I were a team, he's now being talked about as a top 15 pick. I think that'd be a big mistake. I mean, the same with Drew Lock. Drew Lock is fine, but again, he's not a guy who can play next year. I just thought the big winner was Kyler Murray this whole week. I thought him not being there, I think he's going to be definitely the number 2 quarterback taken after Haskins. I think, I wasn't impressed with any of the quarterbacks. There was 8 guys there. The Raiders had 4 pretty good ones. I thought McSorley was terrible. Who's the other guy? They had Locke. They had Jones. Oh, Ryan Finley. Ryan Finley actually wasn't bad. I think Ryan Finley's a guy, NC State. He's not as good as arm as the first 2 guys we talked about, but he's a smart kid. He makes good reads. I think you kind of like him as maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick if you want to bring a guy in and kind of like maybe school him and see if he can get better.
Yeah, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are first-round guys. I mean, I like Daniel Jones as maybe a second-round draft pick.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the intrigue with him is he's 6'5", and he has some athleticism. He played for a good coach at Duke. So I think people see the potential there, but I want to see his arm strength live, and I just wasn't very impressed with his arm strength. One of the interceptions he threw on that second day, I didn't see it, but I saw a video of it. He was trying to throw an out route, and the ball just got there too. It was a little late, and it was just too slow, and Adderley picked it
He
up.
picked some back-to-back plays, which is hard to do on 7-on-7. I saw a rich man's Connor Cook. That's what I saw.
Connor Cook, the last Raiders quarterback to start a playoff game, the only Raiders quarterback to start a playoff game in the last, 15, whatever years.
That's a sad trivia question.
That is a sad trivia question. All right, I do want to take a look a little bit at Dane Brugler's last mock draft. It's a couple weeks old. It's pre-Senior Bowl,
right,
but let's take a look at what he has the Raiders acquiring and what we kind of evaluated that. Number 4 pick, Josh Allen out of Kentucky. I think the Raiders get him at 4. Pretty happy?
I think so. I'm not in love with Josh Allen. I think he's good. I just don't. I think this it's maybe more based on need than overall ability. I think he's probably more of a mid-range guy in my mind. I think he's got some games in college where he didn't really do much. But I get it. I think, again, he's a guy who has all the things you want in a pass rusher. So I think if he's there at 4, it makes sense for the Raiders.
Yeah, I haven't studied him in depth, but I like pass rushers that could actually bend and have speed, and Allen's definitely one of the few that has it. But I wouldn't pass up on Quinnen Williams if he was there at that position over Allen just because of the edge rusher need.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like Oliver. I like Oliver better than both those guys.
You've been big on Oliver.
I think I'll watch a little more film, but the games I saw when he's at his best, I think he makes more plays. I think, and he had a lot less help around him in college. So I just think he had that weird thing with the stupid team jacket and his coach. That was
ridiculous.
Bizarre. And I think he
Can't wear a jacket, you're not playing.
But I like him. I think he's got better feet than the 2 guys you talked about. I know he's not got the bend, and he's not really the same kind of player as Allen is, but just as an impact guy, I think he's a guy who's fallen now. Probably like he was early on, talked about the top 2 guys. Now he's probably down in the 8 to 10 range.
If you trade back, he's
I like him. I mean, I got to watch more. We got a lot more time to watch film, but he's a guy I think that might be the best value of those 3 guys.
Yeah, I think the reason why his draft stock is falling a little bit is because people don't really know exactly where to put him because he's not really big enough to be a 3-tech full time. I think he's like at 274 or something like that. But he's not long enough to be an edge rusher too. But I mean, I agree with you. The guy just makes plays.
Yeah.
So, but you just kind of figure out where you want to put him.
The one thing I wonder about Allen is he big enough to have all the power moves? I mean, he's going to have to add some strength there,
definitely.
right? I mean, that's the thing that I noticed, especially watching the bowl game. He's making plays like crazy. You see him getting around the edge, see that bend, but you just wonder, like he does look a little bit smaller than you'd like, and I think he's going to need to add some strength to be able to not just. Because you can't just win on quickness in the NFL. You need that combination of strength and quickness, and that's what he's going to need to add.
I totally agree.
All right, well, let's see. At the number 24 pick, here's who Brugler has them taken. DK Metcalf, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Any early impressions there? Getting a wide receiver for Derek Carr at number 24.
Oh, if Metcalf is there at 24, I think that's a really good pick. He's a big play receiver with all the tools you want. I got to study his route running a little bit more, but just looking at him and watching some of his highlights, he looks like he could be a big time receiver. And I guess I'd be surprised if he's at 24.
6'4", 230.
Mm-hmm.
He's a
big receiver.
I prefer Hollywood Brown. He's my top guy, top receiver in the draft. But I like Metcalf. I mean, it's definitely a different type of player. But just as far as impact, I think Hollywood Brown could be the guy who can make some plays and stretch the field for him, which they really desperately need. But yeah, I could see Metcalf. I also like the Arizona State kid's also pretty good. He's probably gone by then, I imagine, in his draft. But there's some good receivers. I mean, it's always tough to go with one that high in the first round and make sure he's an impact guy right away. But there's definitely some guys out there.
In this mock from Dane, he has DK as the number one receiver coming off the board, the first receiver coming off the board there at 24. Has him coming right before he's got the Eagles taking Nasir Adderley. Right. And that was before his good week at the Senior Bowl, so we'll see what happens there. All right, number 27, a running back, Josh Jacobs out of Alabama. The Raiders end up with 2 offensive skill players and only 1 defensive guy out of those 3 first-round picks. I don't know that I see that happening, but impressions of Jacobs.
He's all right. I don't see him taking a running back in the first round. I think they have enough guys they like. Gruden mentioned Marshawn Lynch of all people, and I think they're really high on Doug Martin. They want Doug Martin back. They stashed Chris Warren for a reason. They still got DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard in the roster. Both guys have flashed a little bit, Jalen more than DeAndre, but it's a lot of running backs. You can always add somebody else that makes third or fourth round. Running backs, you look at the history of the drafts, there's guys out there in the fourth or fifth round that can make a contribution. So I don't know why you take one in the first round when you have so many other needs, especially on defense. Your defense is so bad. I mean, you take a running back in the first round, Paul Gunther may have a hissy fit. I mean, I would just he'd probably storm out of the room and throw his coffee against the wall. But their defense is terrible. Even talking to the offensive coaches this past week, they all want players. We want guys picked in the first round. They all, hey man, our defense. We totally are okay with defense getting most of these draft picks. So their defense definitely needs more players. So I think a running back would be a bad pick in the first round.
No, I agree. I'm very against picking running backs in the first round unless you have a Saquon Barkley type of running back that's just generational and could be a weapon in the pass game too. I think Dane just really likes Jacobs and is trying to sneak him in the first round with a team that has a running back need.
The running back this week, that was pretty good. Dexter Williams out of Notre Dame, I thought he looked pretty good this week in practice at the game. He has a little wiggle to him. I'm not sure where he's supposed to go in the draft, but he's probably like a third or fourth round guy who I thought, looked the part.
Yeah, I mean, you could find a good running back late in the draft. What's that one guy everybody loved from preseason last year from Texas? He's on the Raiders right
Chris
now.
Warren.
Yeah, Chris Warren. So they have Chris Warren. They have Jalen Richard. Even if they don't get it back, I think they'll be okay at the position anyways. And if they really do want a running back, they could find a good one later on. So I really don't think
I heard Warren weighs 270 right now. He's not in bad shape. He's just gotten in the weight room, but 270.
He's inspired by C.J. Anderson out there with running with guts.
I mean, that's not the ideal playing weight, but I guess he doesn't look fat. He's just gotten big.
About a 240 by the
he'll have offseason, but he's a guy. I mean, they like him. I mean, obviously they stashed him for a reason. I'm not sure. There's some rumors out there that he's going to be the guy next year, which is preposterous. But
you don't know that he's ready.
Yeah, exactly. But they're intrigued by him, which is all you can ask for. I think Doug Martin did enough where I think he'll give him a good enough deal. He won't probably hit the market and try to get more money, which he probably could have if he wanted to. He had that good a year. But I think he'll bring him back and then just add some pieces around Doug.
All right, well, you talked about how Gunther will throw a fit if they go 2 offensive guys. I want to talk to you a little bit. You had a conversation with him, and the interesting quote from him, and I don't think it's all that surprising, but he looking back to last year, he said, I didn't know we weren't going to be able to re-sign Danico Autry, T.J. Carey, Navarro Bowman, and then Jelly was out 10 games. When all those guys left and then we didn't get Khalil back, we had to get some guys under the salary cap that were good guys and could show the younger guys how to do it the right way. So essentially, that's basically him saying, I didn't have much to work with.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying that he didn't have much to work with. And I think that the guys they brought in, I don't know if you call them stopgap guys, but those guys didn't really add much last year as far as the free agents they signed. So I think he looked at the cupboard not being very full for him. I think they set a franchise record for most points allowed, so they had an awful year. I think he'll tell you he's happy with the progress the young guys made, the D-line, the 3 rookie D-linemen. Maybe Carl Joseph definitely made some strides, so I think that was a positive. And
Garyon Conley late in the year.
Conley made some strides, but there wasn't a lot to really be positive about the defensive side. I mean, the linebackers are pretty bad. I just think, So, yeah, he's definitely was frustrated. I think he's looking forward to getting some new talent, both in the free agency and in the draft. So, we'll see if he can turn. I think he's a good coach. I mean, I pumped him up before the season started last year, and then things went horribly wrong. So we'll see. We'll give him a mulligan. I mean, the whole staff is getting a mulligan. I mean, the only guy they got rid of was Turgovac. He's going to be bumped upstairs, kind of an advisory role. They brought in Brenson Buckner to coach D-line. That's it. I mean, the quarterback coach left. Callahan went to the Bengals, but everyone else is back next year. I know the fans want Tom Cable's head on the stick, but he's back next year. So, again, really, they're saying, you know what? It wasn't us. It was the players. So let's get some players and see what happens next year, which is kind of I don't know, but it is what it is. But it's a mulligan.
Do you think the Turgovac move is that a matter of they really like Buckner and they want to? Yeah, more just we want to keep this guy. You want to keep them, kind of have them both around, but we really like Buckner, like the energy he can bring to that D line.
I think so. I think they also didn't quite get enough out of that group that they wanted. I think it's not they don't want to fire the guy, but they want something different. There's definitely
they need a different voice in those guys' ear.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, the one big kind of lingering question we should talk a little bit about is where the hell is this team going to play next year?
I think everyone knows it's going to be in the Bay Area at this point. I think it's going to be either probably Santa Clara or San Francisco. I think Oakland's probably third place.
I don't think San Francisco's happening.
Don't think so?
I don't think so. I don't think the Niners are going to allow that because I think they can have some control over that, being that this is their market. I don't think the Niners are going to allow.
So they'd rather have them play at Levi's than play at AT&T.
Well, yeah, I think so because if they were to play in San Francisco, you're letting them play in the city that's on your name, and you're not getting. I don't. Maybe they would have to pay them something for that for coming in their market.
They got to pay either way. They got to pay either way. So since Niners in the league's call, I think the league would love them to play at Levi's. But Mark Davis has been so outspoken about how much he hates Levi's and the idea. So, I mean, I guess it'd be kind of a concession on his part to do that. But I think those are the two. I think Oakland's in third place.
I think the hard part about it is if you end up in Levi's. And say it goes pretty well, then you're going to have all these people saying, well, why the hell didn't we do this in the first place? But
they won't care. They'll be like, see, we're in Vegas. Yeah. Who cares? See ya.
See, you know what? Like, I think for a Niners fan perspective, if the Raiders, it would have been better for everybody if they had joined forces way back when, because what's the big problem with Levi's is the design was terrible. The sun issue. It's kind of just a no frills stadium. It's not really. I mean, it's fancy and all that.
Ingress, egress.
Yeah. I mean, but that you wouldn't fix. But if they had joined forces with the Raiders and they wouldn't have just, because we all know what they did. They took the design that they had built for Candlestick and just said, okay, boom. Okay, we're going to pick that up. We're going to move it here. Well, if they had ended up joining forces with the Raiders to build a stadium down there together, they have to go back to the drawing board and design something together. And had they actually gone and done this together, they would have probably done more environmental studies. They would have come up with a new design, and we might have a much better NFL stadium sitting down there in Santa Clara for both these teams to enjoy. But that's not what happened.
No, I think Mark Davis always has eyes in L.A. and then in Vegas. I think sharing a stadium with the 49ers is not his ideal scenario. I think it was ugly, but the way it turned out, he's sitting pretty. He's getting a lot of money to go to Vegas. He's getting a brand new stadium, state of the art, a whole new fan base, whole new market. So I think he's definitely the winner. Not right now, but next year this time he'll be the big winner in all this.
So is there going to be, I think always whenever a new stadium opens, there has to be like a warm-up event before you have a football game. So do you think in Vegas, when the stadium's built, will there be a UFC event to warm it up with Derek Carr?
Derek Carr against Max Kellerman? Yeah.
That was weird.
I mean, Derek just has to ignore that stuff. I mean, he's just a little too sensitive about that kind of stuff. I know his brothers egg him on. His brothers don't do him any favors, but you gotta just not hear that stuff. And I mean, that's what they want. I mean, Stephen A. Smith and Kellerman, that whole show is based on provoking people, and they get a reaction, and they've won.
I wonder how many people had seen that clip until Derek went off on it. I mean, as soon as I saw Derek's tweets going off, what the hell's this about?
He gave him material for the rest of the week. I mean, it's just that's what they want. And you don't see other quarterbacks do it. Other quarterbacks don't respond. I just think it was a bad move.
Derek spends a lot of time on social media in the offseason. I think too much. He does a better job, I think, in season of tuning most of that out. But in the offseason, I have to turn off like the notifications for. I sometimes used to have the notifications on from him. The last off season, I got to turn it off. He spends a little bit too much time on there during the off season.
You could argue him responding means he is a little insecure. It means he is kind of questioning about his role and what it is. And I just think that maybe he's. I just think that you got to be above that kind of stuff. I just think that's why to take it another step further. There's some talk about the Raiders draft. There's some stupid mock drafts are coming out now. They're going to draft Kyler Murray fourth, whatever. But they're going to groom him for a year like Mahomes was in Kansas City. I'm not sure Derek Carr is the kind of guy
that would that's
going to handle that well. Just like, hey, man,
that's a totally...
this is your year. Help out Murray, and the next year he'll be the guy. And then we'll get rid of you. I don't see Derek Carr handling that. I mean, Alex Smith is a much different animal. He's much older.
1 year left on the contract.
Yeah, it's a whole different scenario. But I just don't. To me, that these mock drafts are so painful, and that idea that they could bring in the guy who Derek's going to groom for a year and help out for a year. That would not. No,
Derek is not at a stage in his career where he is going to groom another quarterback. I mean, he's a nice guy. He'll be pleasant with the guy, but he's not going to sit there and groom a guy to be his replacement. No way. I don't see that.
Yeah, if they draft the quarterback, essentially they're saying they're giving up on Carr. So why would you help out a guy that is representing your end with this franchise or your failure as a quarterback? But I mean, I agree with you guys too. He's just making himself a target for that show. Every time he does bad, I'm sure they're going to bring it up and make it a big deal now that he responded that way.
All right, Super Bowl. You guys want to talk a little bit about Super Bowl? You guys fired up for the big match? The matchup I'm hoping we get to see. I don't know if they'll be on the field much together or at all together. I don't know if one of these guys will be active. I want to see Obi Melifonwu against C.J. Anderson. Yes. Big battle of former Raiders.
They're a sick puppy.
Who had a bigger impact in their Raiders career? Obi Melifonwu or C.J. Anderson? About the same.
C.J. had a big week in practice. But, I watched the Patriots game against the Chiefs, and I was at a bar in New Orleans, like you mentioned, and the entire place was rooting for the Chiefs. Everyone hates Brady, but at the same time, everyone knew he was going to get it done. Everyone's like, oh, man, he's going to do it again? Come on. And, everyone's dreading it. And it's, they had 3 touchdowns in the last, 15. Yeah. It was absurd. But he's so freaking good.
Yeah.
And it's not even fair anymore. So, how do you pick against Tom Brady? How do you – I mean, he's lost 3 of these, so obviously he can't lose these Super Bowls. But I'm trying to find a way. I write my picks started this morning. I'm going to pick the Rams. I have to get there at some point, but it's hard for me to figure out how I'm going to get there. But I just think that Tom Brady is just I think he's the greatest of all time. I hate to you hate to compare eras. Joe Montana's great. It's a different game now, but just what he can do in terms of the longevity, his career, how long he's been playing.
8 straight AFC title games they've been in. It's ridiculous. 9th Super Bowl, right? It's unbelievable.
And a lot of these times, the talent around him is not great. I mean, again, I made a joke about it earlier, but Edelman's been talked about for a Hall of Fame now. I mean, give me Julian Edelman for a Hall of Fame, but that's all Tom Brady. Tom Brady makes guys better and makes guys make plays, and it just elevates everyone around him. It's just it's incredible. He still makes all the throws you want him to make. He still has great accuracy, and arm strength is still there at 41. Obviously, he can dissect defenses. He carved up the Chiefs, every single time. 2 weeks of him preparing for a defense is scary. But I'm going with the Rams. I think Aaron Donald will make life a little harder for him. I think Aqib Talib has a big game. I think Todd Gurley bounces back this week. So I'm going with the Rams. Even though in my back of my mind, I think that's a bad pick, but that's what I'm doing. I'm going with the Rams.
If Talib matches up with Edelman and Edelman burns him for a big game, maybe he should be in the Hall of Fame. No, just kidding.
There you go.
But I've been pretty back and forth on this game. I think if you look at the numbers and some of the things that the Rams do, they hit some of the weaknesses that on the Patriots. The Patriots don't defend the outside zone very well. I think they gave up 4.5 yards a carry on the outside zone. They're terrible at defending, runs from 11 personnel. The Rams lead the league in 11 personnel, running from 11 personnel. I think the Patriots have the worst play-action defense in the league, and the Rams run a lot of play-action. So the Rams, they're good at hitting some of those weaknesses of the Patriots. But if you look at the human element and you look at Bill Belichick, it's just hard for me to see Goff tearing up the Patriots defense when Belichick has 2 weeks to prepare for him and they have that big game experience. So my mind is telling me that the Rams could take it, but if you look at the human elements and everything put together, I think the Patriots pull it out at the end.
So also from a pure like gambling perspective, like I was surprised though.
Gambling, is that something out there?
It's big.
People gamble on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, $300 million. I saw yesterday. Like, $300 million will be betting on this game. But when I was at that bar in New Orleans and the game was over and the Patriots won, everyone's like, "Oh man, the Patriots are going to win the whole. They're going to win the whole thing again." And everyone's thinking it's kind of inevitable. Tom Brady's going to win. The opening line came out. And I was surprised. I thought the opening line would be like Patriots minus 3 or 4. That's why in my mind I was like, they should be favored by 3 or 4 based on what they've done the last 2 games. They destroyed the Chargers. They beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. I think they should be favored. The spread came out, Rams minus 1, and it moved like lightning. Like everyone is betting on the Patriots. Like it's moved 4 points. To me, like, I don't know what the wise guys are doing, but I thought it was interesting. I thought maybe it was a trap line. I don't know what they think the Rams are going to win, but to me, opening the line at Rams minus 1. After what took place in the playoffs, I thought it was surprising to me. I was surprised at the opening line. What was your opening line have been if you were setting the line for that game?
No, I agree. I thought it would be Patriots 2.5 or 3 or something like that. But to see 1 is pretty surprising. And I think if you just look at the numbers, that's probably what happened. I think the Rams matchup on paper look better than the Patriots on paper, but obviously you have to play the game. And I think the over/under moved down a few points.
Yeah, I think it's 56 now or 55.
Yeah, I think both offenses might have a hard time moving the ball. It's not going to be. I don't think it'll be a shootout like last year's Super Bowl.
Well, I got to take the Rams just for one reason: Marcus Peters, baby. Got to go for the Oakland guy. It's my guy. Known him for.
He's had a rough year though. He hasn't been.
He's had a rough year.
He hasn't been himself this year.
I know, but it's Super Bowl. It's time for him to join Marshawn, get a ring for Oakland. I've known that guy for probably 10 years or so now. I like Marcus. He's a fiery guy. He's fun to be around, and if you give him a Super Bowl ring to walk around with Marshawn, those guys are going to be drinking a lot of Hennessy for a long time, celebrating their Super Bowl ring. So for the Oakland guy, I'm picking the Rams.
Nice.
All right, well, I think that'll wrap up our first off-season episode of State of the Nation. We're officially calling this Season 2, Episode 1. I don't know when our next Episode 2 will be, but we'll have some off-season episodes here, and we'll come back and hang out at the athletic headquarters in San Francisco.
Combine's in what? 3 weeks or
Combine?
4 weeks? It's 3 weeks.
Yeah, we can reconvene after the Combine and see what you guys learned there.
Yeah.
All right, talk to you guys again.
Thanks.